about choices, no doubt.
Choices.
Looking at your life from the inside.
That's right.
Life's about choices, no doubt. Looking at your life from the inside. Life's about choices, no doubt.
Speak on it.
Looking at your life from the inside. Life's about choices, no doubt.
West side.
Looking at your life from the inside. Looking out.
Family, it's your boy, Lamont Faison, with You Versus Yourself podcast, where the truth and you collide. If you like my content, please like and subscribe to my channel. And remember, I'm still in the building. Family, it's your boy, Lamont Faison, and you know I'm still in the building at You Versus Yourself podcast, where the truth and you collide. Domestic violence part 2. I think the last episode we talked about preachers being violent and participating in domestic violence and wearing the mask and covering it up. I'm still on that topic today about domestic violence in a church in general. Somebody sent me a DM. Lamont, do you think we should be vetting these preachers? Absolutely. Again, this podcast is not about judging and putting people down. It's about solution. It's about operating and offering an opportunity for healing. Extremely important. I want you to understand what my goal is. And the only way that can happen, preachers, pastors, bishops, evangelists, is that we expose our struggles and the issues that we've had in our past. Why is that important? There's many people sitting in your congregations that are being abused. But if you're participating in abuse yourself, you don't even see that. The power and control is what I talked about in the first video, right? Power and control, demanding. And there's all sorts of types of abuses. Economic abuse, that happens quite often in the church. The manipulation, the deception, using tithes, using money in the church to make people feel guilty if they don't have enough. I recently saw an incident. It was one of the Winans brothers. And again, this isn't about beating them up, but it was just about what I saw and how I perceived it. He asked for a certain amount of money, and I suppose God told him that, according to him. The person that came up didn't necessarily have it all. And right there on the spot was made to feel like you shouldn't be up here because that's not what I asked for. To me, that's power and control. And there's another thing that I want to address with the members in a congregation. When you are being abused, intentionally or unintentionally, these things arise because of the voids we trying to fill within ourselves. Looking for a mother, looking for a father, looking for somebody in the church that I could cling on to come rescue me. So whatever that person says, we go for it. I need more money in the church. I need a plane. And the members begin to scrape their pennies together to buy a preacher a plane. When you're getting on the bus every day, you are responsible for your responses to when those preachers ask for things that you don't have. The preacher also is responsible for not abusing his congregation economically. If you want to buy a plane with the money that you made from selling books. Notice I'm not saying any names. I'm talking about this abuse of power, this power and control, doing it because we can. There's a study I want you to hear. Let me read this. This is from ABC Corporation. Recently published a report titled, Submit to Your Husbands. Women told to endure domestic violence in the name of God. Advocates say the church is not just failing to sufficiently address domestic violence, it is both enabling it and concealing it. It's interesting that this goes on in the church, but it's not surprising. As somebody who's a domestic violence professional, I want you to understand that a lot of these things stem from my childhood. The way you feel about yourself, low self-esteem, being abused in your childhood. We got to clear up those childhood wounds because we're looking for people to rescue us. We're looking for things to clean on in the church. And unfortunately for us, some preachers, not all, take advantage of that situation. It's no different than when I was in church and I was a minister in the church, that I would take advantage of the women's vulnerability so I could sleep with them. Notice I don't give myself a pass because the behavior in itself is sick. I needed healing. I needed help. That's the thing I'm offering when it comes to our preachers, pastors, and bishops and clergymen as a whole. Your childhood wounds. Who told you you wasn't good enough? Who told you in order for you to be masculine and powerful, you got to be demanding? You got to diminish your spouse. You got to let her know that I'm the man of the house. This is my castle. And when she does not conform to what you think she should be, you lay hands on her or you call her names. And then you put a smile on your face and say, praise the Lord, saints. Meanwhile, she's suffering in silence. There's also a study that talks about religion, the cause of domestic violence. Religion is not the cause of domestic violence, but we have certainly seen preachers, bishops, clergymen, evangelists use the scriptures in the Bible for power and control. How many times do you go to church and they talk about tithes over and over and over? God told me to tell you, let me get a $2,000 line. Let me get a $500 line. I'm trying to tell y'all that's power and control. And if you don't put yourself in position to heal yourself, you will continue to fall for that nonsense. I'm not suggesting that you don't pay tithes, you don't believe in that principle. That's fine if that's what you do. But if you manipulate it to do it, if you coerced to do it, it's a problem. And those preachers become very manipulative and they use the scriptures. God said, I'm the man of the house. This is my castle, right? But it's fear-based and not leadership. It's abusive and not loving. There's a principle out there we call in our studies conflict kindness. When you deal with issues in a nice way, where we have disagreements, we can have that conversation. But you got to first change your thinking, Pastor. You think it's about being masculine and being dominant. That's not what it's about. That's not what God referred to as leadership. Leadership is leading, being an example, coming to the table, having conversations, having discussions. It's not just your way. But if you use that scripture in the dogmatic way, then that's the position that you push. What do we do when the pastor is abusive? How do we know if he's abusive? Sometimes you don't, because typically a lot of those things go on behind doors where you can't see it. But that first lady or that man that's being abused is suffering. Should the pastor or the preacher be vetted? You doggone right. I recently said in Domestic Violence in the Church, in episode 4, I believe, that I found out that the preacher that killed his second wife had priors. At least that's according to reports. Shouldn't we know that? Shouldn't I know if that Catholic priest is a freaking pedophile? It is on us, the parishioners, the members, to vet who you calling your leader. It's on you. You would want to know when you're taking your kids to Sunday school if that preacher is a freaking pedophile. I don't care, even in the youth services, who's in charge of that? I need to do a background. Gentlemen, this is where the man step up. This is where women step up and say, wait, hold on. Before we just start joining a congregation, let me vet the people who's in charge of my children when I'm not around. And religion is used quite often for different types of abuse. In the name of God, it is your responsibility. Well, you know, that's the man of God, Lamont. And if God called him to preach, I don't care about God calling him to preach. I want to know if he's a freaking pedophile. I want to know if he got domestic violence in his background. Now you say, well, Lamont, you know, people can change. They can, but I still want to know. I got my third eye on him or her. I still want to know that. You send your children back there to youth class and children's church, and the person who teaching is a pedophile. Touching little boys, touching little girls, because you haven't done your homework. People, we have to wake up Everything that's going around in this world, and preachers or so-called preachers are taking advantage of your vulnerability and your high praise that that's the man of God. People make mistakes all the time. I told you about my situation, taking advantage of women in the church. Now, that doesn't mean that they weren't willing participants, but my motives wasn't right. I wasn't authentic in who I was. I was creating opportunities. Tell me if you ever heard this line before. Hey, we can go to my house and have Bible study. You know how many times I used that? Preacher. And they trust. That's a man of God. We're going to go have Bible study at his house. Right. And we're going to be naked 10 minutes later. You have to vet the people that are in charge and who you are sitting under. Preachers are using scriptures from the Bible to manipulate you. Every time you turn around, there's an offering plate. It's better to give than receive. Then when you going to start giving? Pastor, it's cool when the people putting in the pan, but when people are in trouble and they need some money, now it becomes a task. But they've been tire payers in the church, but now all of a sudden it's a problem. Let me check it out. Let me see if we can do this. Let me get you a voucher. I didn't put a voucher in the pan. See what I mean? It's a business. And the whole thing becomes abusive. Physical abuse, emotionally abuse, economic abuse, sexual abuse. I heard the stories where the preacher was sleeping with other women in the church. This is God's will. Don't tell my wife. Well, last time I checked, David tried that in the Bible and got chastised for sleeping with another man's wife. I've been there too. This is not about choosing sides. It's about righteousness. And I'm not even a religious person, but I know right from wrong. I know when my motives are not right. So again, folks, you are responsible for vetting that preacher. Do not let people tell you, do not let people tell you that you shouldn't vet the pastor. You absolutely should investigate a man that's going to be leading you. You also should be vetting that youth pastor. If the pastor got a problem with you vetting people and your kids are in the back with them, then you know already that's not the church for you. This is real life, folks. Real things are happening. Look how long the Catholic Church tried to cover up the abuse of little boys. Are you kidding me? They tried to cover it up. If you thought it was right, why are you trying to cover it up? So here's what we can do as far as healing is concerned for us members. Find a counselor. I'm not talking about a church counselor. I'm talking about a therapist, somebody who's licensed in the field of trauma. Marriage counseling. Get to the root of your situation. Now I'm gonna say something. I'm not sure if it's controversial or not, but here's what I'm going to suggest, and it's just a suggestion. You get counseling first, so you can figure out what's rooted in you, so you can uproot it and heal in the areas that you need to heal in before you show up and try to connect with somebody else. And on the other side, the man or the woman, you go to therapy and counseling so you can find out what's going on within you so you can heal. So when you finally connect, at least you understand you've done the real work. If you are a preacher or a pastor, you know if you're abusive. You know if you got some tendency and some ways about yourself. Go get counseling so you can heal, become the best version of yourself, and show up as your authentic self. I am Lamont Faison. You versus Yourself podcast. Being calm is cool.